Ja, guten Abend auch
Hello
von mir. Ich
everyone,
bin
my name is
Bastian
Bastian
Thiedau.
Thiedau. It is my pleasure to have to give you the semi-final presentation, so to speak. Today we've already heard a lot about, or we've heard the name GDW quite some time, and didab. Now I am going to show you our learning platform and present it to you. So I am from GDW Nord, which is the cooperative for sheltered workshops for people with disabilities in northern Germany. And Dr. Koloff said as we have around about 80 members. So we actually come from the area of order acquisition for the sheltered workshops. So GDW Nord has the objective to acquire orders or jobs for the sheltered workshops so that their work can be designed in a sustainable way as well. Now, didab is on one hand driven by GDW Nord, and already back in 2015, 2016, we started to say that in the area of education for people with disabilities, that's what we want to work in, and this is how the study actually came about, the study that we all heard about today, and that's been mentioned quite some time or really frequently today. So our learning platform shows what people with disabilities wanted or want to learn. So quite some years ago, but not many things have changed actually, and we see that despite the changes that we've seen through the pandemic, we still have the right idea, or the idea is still the right one that we had back then, and that we continue to develop. Now, what is didab? didab is a digital learning platform, which in the end is sort of a website, but it's an interactive website that today has more than 350 learning boxes. Ms. Sengelkes said this noon that we have a close collaboration with Ostfalia University, and we do this since the educational study and since the development of it. But now, within the framework of the didab, we also cooperate in the area of production, so with all the learning boxes that have been added to it. And now we see what technology can do, because I do not want to keep talking all the time, because we've heard a lot about digital education in general, but now I would like to show you something in real life, so some hands-on things here. So there it is. Sometimes you're lucky, you know, so I'm a lucky one now. So it worked out. Here we see the didab learning platform that we've already seen at a first glance during the other presentation. So we created a learning platform that deals with all the topics from the educational study mentioned by Mr. Koloff. So we have all the different fields, grayish here, so they address all the areas of the daily life. So we do not make a distinguishment here between the DIBA project, which is mostly dealing with the topics of the integration into the labor market. So this would be work and education right here. But we created a learning platform, or we started to develop it, as I said before, back in 2017, that looks at all the areas of the daily life. Because, as Mr. Koloff said this morning, the educational need and the wishes and desires by the people with disabilities affect all the areas of life. So same as it applies to you and myself. So then there is daily life and living, social competences, social skills. That's one point which is crucial, as we heard before, also for the integration. Then mobility, computer, leisure time, internet, computer, social media. So digital competence is reflected here as well, or digital literacy. But then knowledge and legal, nutrition and cooking, or financial topics. What I would like to show you now is how it actually works, and I would really like to show you what didab can do and what it really is. In the beginning, we thought about how this low barrier thing can be implemented, because we wanted to create a platform that can also be used autonomously by people with disabilities. So here we have an automatic password. I don't know who likes these automated passwords. You might know this, but we integrated something like this. You might know this from your locking screen from your cell phone. So today we're not going to save the password. That's what the computer just asked me. So again, this is an alternative option that we created, but we still try to find out how we can simplify this. So the logging in procedure, so the accessibilities to such a platform is actually also confronting people with certain technological framework conditions. And we try to have not that many barriers, but it did not work out 100%. So we're trying to figure out how we can improve this. So on one hand, we want to allow people to have access to knowledge. And at the very beginning, we were focusing on lifelong learning. So we've already heard on the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. So it is on one, not just about the qualification content that is to be integrated here, but as we've heard in our educational study before, it's also about the lifelong learning that is to be integrated here. What we wanted to do as well is to establish a new form of learning, and we wanted to create access to learning. So you might have seen this during the discussion. I was sitting on my chair and was really excited because I just wanted to be part of this discussion, because you've been talking about the need for media competence. And I mean, there is a huge need for this, but what we were able to see and what we heard from people in practice, so to speak, and what we've seen ourselves in our own workshops, is that someone who has never held a tablet in his hand and is confronted with didab for the first time learns really fast what the first navigation logics are. So what we created at the same time is a general possibility to make first digital experiences. And if we look at this in detail, let's just skip out the past 2 years. So before this, we've had a situation in which digitization for people with learning impairments, learning difficulties, well, they did not really have access to these type of media in general. Of course, that's nothing you can say in general, but digital learning has been impossible for our target group. So we have the learning platform, and it is designed pretty clean and simple, and we did this intentionally. We have 12 fields of subjects or topics. We have round about 70 exercises. That's the second layer or second level here. So exercise programs is something that we use during the development phase and in participatory exchange with our so-called test groups. So during the development phase, we always had talked to the target group and got feedback from the target group. So 70 exercises, which sounds not that much, but well, what you find here is always the same structure of every exercise. So that's one on weights and measures, and here we always have an introduction. That is what has been taken over by Ostfalia University as well. So we did some fundamental work here, and then, well, there's this introduction where the topics and the targets are explained. And this is what where learning actually takes place. So again, we have about 350 learning boxes in general, and we continue to create more of them, and we continue to update them. So just looking at the time, well, what I would like to do now is to open one of these learning boxes. Ms. Engelkes has already shown us one from the didab area, and now I would like to show you one on linear measure and show you some specifics of this video, of this box here. So you open the learning box on linear measures. In this learning box, you will learn how to measure a length and how to read it. So you see that there is a red frame about the continue button, which means that there's no more content to this unit. So that was it, and that's why we created this red frame about it, so that people know that they can continue. Susie wants to have a new cupboard in her room. That's where it's supposed to be. But how big can it be so as to fit into this empty spot? So she thinks what to use to measure it. So there are 2 points that we created, or that we picked as a benchmark for our target group. So we want to make it more personal, so to speak, which means that we always use the same characters in our videos that guide you through the content. And this makes it easier to transfer it to your daily life. And they're also supposed to have a certain entertainment factor. So we have the characters that are actors of this learning experience, of this learning adventures in order to impart the knowledge. We always work in real environments, so that's Susie's room. But of course, when you buy a ticket somewhere, then this is done at a railway station, of course, and then when you deposit money or if you need to go to a bank, then of course the videos are recorded at a bank. So then we have some navigation elements here that we've already seen on the first page. So that is really easy to see. So big navigation elements so that they are both responsive and you can use them just like on a smartphone. And then we have a repeat button. This is the repeat button. So what you have seen in the short sequence can be repeated over and over again. So if you did not understand something, you can simply repeat it, or you can also go one step back and listen to the context again, or you can simply proceed in your own pace so that you, or by clicking on the continue button. Now, this allows for an individual learning pace, for learning speed. And when listening to it, you might have heard already that we do not just work with professional speakers, but here we have a very simple day-to-day language that is used in combination with our, general video material. So let's continue. There are several tools that you can use in order to measure a length. For instance, a ruler. So we will go through the content. Let me move ahead. Now, click on the tool that you want to use, or that Susie should use in order to measure the length. So, Mrs. Engelke mentioned it this morning. We do not just work with many different types, but here we have more pictures, and things are split into sequences. And what is important, and what becomes ever more important, because that's the feedback that we've gotten, because people like it, is the fact that this is a really interactive approach. And from us, from GDW North, this is really important, because we want to motivate them, we want to activate them. We do not want to have passive learning, as it can be done by several or by certain YouTube videos if you have the proper language and the proper speed. But we really want to ensure that you can experience your own, what you can do, so people are supposed to become active. Of course, this is only having a certain test character. So the learning box would continue just like this. So she would now pick the right or the wrong answer, would then be given a feedback, and it would then end with a summary of what has been done. And that's why I would close this. So we've seen the various topics, and up here we have some well-known symbols. I've just done some workshops that were inclusive, so both people with disabilities, but also the experts have been there, or professionals, and we all knew what we needed those symbols for without having to explain them. So if I click on the house, then we all know that this brings us back to the first or the landing page. Now, all content is within the theoretical but close to practical instruction. So in order to build on what Mr. Grump said, we try to rebuild the real-life situation in the training, but then I can say that this is absolutely in line with digital learning, so that's blended learning. So involving digital media into in-person training, this is, especially when I think about qualification for the employment market, then I think that this is really the key term. And that's why I am very happy that with didab, we created content that can be accessed also independently, but they're also suitable for instruction settings within the organization. And I think that here you have to make a distinguishment. So you have vocational training and qualification, where you have certain schedules and plans with the content that you have to impart. Then it's really important that to do this in this blended learning, so as to be able to make a distinguishment, and then things can be transferred properly. But at the same time, so considering lifelong learning, you can be sitting on your sofa in the evening and just look at one of these learning boxes. So it's summertime, so let's look at how to plan a trip. So just as we would watch documentation on television, 19 minutes on the couch, 200 facts, how many do you remember? Maybe 10? And the next day only 2? And 1 year later you might only remember 1 fact. So I think that here we have to make a distinguishment. So what's the setting of learning and what the objectives of learning are? And this is what provides us with a whole bunch of options that we have. And that's why I think that we can have this broad setup in order to use didab. Now, this is what my experiences are and what we've heard from you as well. So there are no limits when it comes to when or how to use it. So you can have autonomous or independent usage phases. You can also do this as a homework or as a preparation for something. And this is not just true for the sheltered workshops, but also for living or in other types of institutions here, but also in the schooling concept or inclusion schools, where they could also make use of this in the school setting. So for graduates, for instance, so they could also use this as a first step to the employment market. Now, something special that I like to show before I can close this page is the search function. You all know search functions. That is always really helpful and provides you with a second way to find your information. So if I don't find what I'm looking for, then you can make use of the search function. And here you do not just find the free field search, the classical one, but you can also use these search terms and the pictograms in order to find what you're looking for. So let's say that we go to authorities, for instance, then various things are offered. So employment market or labor market, company founding, so different topics. At this point, I would like to leave the didab page, but for everyone who's interested and who's online and who's here in person, I'm happy to offer you a test of it so that you can see it yourselves. But I have the chance to show you how to do this, so hopefully I can get back. Yeah, that's great. So we already talked about the question, how does didab continue to develop? And that is a consistent project for us, a continuous project. So one question we were given was, can we also present our own content on didab? And it's called My Institution. That is an exclusive part of it, which is what people use really frequently. So it's used by institutions and the work with people with disabilities. So they have one section there where they can store their own learning content and make it available to their students or to their people. So this is well accepted and really practical as well, because it all comes from one hand, and they do not have to work with another parallel system or a cloud, but everything can be stored there. Then there's didab Unica. Just real simple. We also offer to clone our system in order to use it as a basis for another learning platform that others might want to use. Now, what will be the next step? What are our targets? For about 1 year or 1.5 years, didab is now available to the public, or we presented it 1.5 years ago. And in the meantime, we have more than 12,000 users now. We granted user accesses to more than 12,000 users. As far as the content is concerned, I'm sure that we continue to develop it from a technical point of view with my institution. That option here is another development step, but we will make things simpler. And what is really important to me, and which is also something that has arisen in parallel, and also due to the cooperation with Ostfalia, is the practical or practice-oriented topics from the world of life, from the work life. So it's not just about imparting media competences and skills, but really building up practical skills and competences so as to be prepared for the first day of work. So this would be our next big project in order to see what we can do for certain fields of jobs, what we can do there in order to work on specific materials. So this would be an instruction and first imparting of knowledge for various activities. So just as Mr. Ring described before. So you could create something on basically everything, but the question is what to pick and what to select here. So for us, that is really important, because this is what drives us. So knowledge and practical skills, that's what we want to impart. And by this, we want to also support this difficult term of participation. So I am convinced that those who wants to be, who wants to actively participate in our world, then also has to deal with the digital world. That's what we've seen. So the society is digital as well. And if you want to be, or if you want to participate completely, then you have to take part in this world, and especially when it comes to education. So first of all, I would like to thank you for providing me with the opportunity to show you didab just real quick, and I try to explain how the entire project actually emerged, how it evolved, and I announced it. So there's a QR code, and if you're interested in having temporary access to it, then please feel free to do that, and please let me know. I'm looking forward to get in touch with you, and we're always happy to people supporting us. Thank you very much.